You're watching Alaska's news source.
Now on Alaska's news source, RFK Jr.'s speech disrupted. We've just officially learned the name of the man taken to the ground. Good evening. It's the talk of Alaska tonight, and within the last hour, Fairbanks police are now identifying the man who disrupted the Health and Human Service Secretary's Fairbanks news conference.
Our cameras are rolling as you hear the man yelling. Let's get the latest from Alex Bangle, who was there with Adrian Peterson as it happened. Alex, what can you tell us?
Since I reported to you an hour ago, Fairbanks police have now confirmed the man detained today after disrupting Secretary Kennedy's news conference is Patrick Woolery. Police tell me he has been trespassed from the property for 60 days, meaning right now he's not facing charges. Here's what that moment looked like as Woolery told us he felt compelled because of the situation in Gaza.
I want to thank those senators for helping us with this. Again, Chief Ridley, thank you.
You're going to penalized! Come on! You're so rebelling to listen to that! Stop! I'm going to go. Take him in.
Woolery was taken to the ground and detained for a short time before being released and riding away on his bike. He told Alaska's news source he may face federal charges. The Secretary and Senators Sullivan and Murkowski continued a news conference after this event.
It's not something that I can really bear to just sit around and do nothing about, but that's all you can do. Right? We don't have any real power. But those people did, so I decided to go over and yell at them and tell them to stop. They're committing genocide.
It's disappointing. You don't expect that in Alaska. You know, we have our differences, but you don't see it was kind of a violent action there, and his team did a really good job of keeping him safe, but it's not appropriate. That's not who Alaskans are.
Leading up to the event, a group of around 85 protesters assembled along the street outside the health center to protest Kennedy's vaccine policies, along with the situation in Gaza and other issues. Kennedy left right after the news conference ended. We'll keep you updated if there are any changes. Alex Bengal, Alaska's news source.
Well, tonight, details remain limited on a plane crash that happened at the Willow airport yesterday.
That crash leaving a veteran Iditarod musher with serious injuries. Our Georgina Fernandez has the latest from Willow tonight.
There's limited details right now surrounding this plane crash as that plane continues to rest on its nose here at the Willow airport as NTSB starts diving into their investigation. The FAA and National Transportation Safety Board are on the ground on Wednesday, documenting Tuesday's plane crash. After state troopers say an Aeronica Champ with a solo occupant and pilot crashed Tuesday just after 5 p.m.
It's super early in the investigation. Right now we're documenting the airplane.
Iditarod confirmed on Wednesday with Alaska's news source that the pilot was 27-time Iditarod musher Ramey Smith, known in the Iditarod community for racking up 12 top 10 finishes and crafting the new World Arch. Iditarod telling us on Wednesday their hearts are with Ramey and his family as he continues to recover at the hospital. Right now, the NTSB says it's still in its early phases of the investigation and little is known. Do you know if this happened during a takeoff or a landing?
We're trying to find that out right now. We haven't spoken with the pilot yet, but when we do, we're hoping that he can provide us some details about the flight itself.
Additionally, the NTSB says it will look into things like weather and the airplane history as it focuses right now on documenting the scene, aircraft position, and condition.
It looks like the right wing partially separated and there's damage to both wings and substantial damage to the fuselage.
As they wait to have the aircraft removed later this week.
I've been talking to the recovery team. They're getting things together to come and get the airplane and move it to a secure location where we'll be able to take a closer look at it.
And NTSB says if a preliminary report is done for this crash, it could take a month before it comes out. Georgina Fernandez, Alaska's news source.
Now, Alaska's news source did speak with Smith briefly on the phone today as he continues to recover at the hospital. He has declined comment for now.
Alaska's Alaska's Department of Corrections is now facing accusations that ICE detainees were exposed to tuberculosis this summer during their 23-day stay at the Anchorage Correctional Complex. DOC says all 41 ICE detainees were screened for TB when they arrived at the Anchorage jail on June 8th, and none tested positive for active TB. That's the contagious kind. But Alaska's news source has learned that one of those detainees began treatment for tuberculosis just 3 days after being returned to the Federal Northwest ICE Processing Center in Tacoma, Washington, raising some questions about where the TB was contracted and how it's being treated.
We're not sharing his name due to his concerns about potential retaliation, but he is sharing his medical records. Sean Quirk is the detainee's attorney.
The check-in process at Northwest ICE Processing Center in Tacoma took an extremely long time.
Quirk says his client and 34 other ICE detainees transferred from Anchorage to Tacoma on June 30th, went through additional screenings upon arrival, and then were placed in medical isolation.
They were told that there was some sort of exposure, but they didn't really know what was going on.
Quirk says he found out days later because he was denied access to his client.
The U.S. government effectively disappeared my client for over a week.
Unable to reach his client, Quirk became worried.
So I started cold calling hospitals and eventually located him at Tacoma General Hospital.
Medical records show his client was taken to the emergency room on July 7th, noting symptoms were acute onset of abdominal pain, nausea, and intractable vomiting, and that he was recently diagnosed with tuberculosis. On July 4th, during the time the detainee says he was in medical isolation and before his admission to the ER, medical records show he was prescribed a multi-drug tuberculosis treatment that can have serious side effects.
TB remains very much a public health priority.
I sat down with an epidemiologist at the Alaska Department of Health to find out more about how tuberculosis infections work.
It's important to realize that TB is unique in that it exists in kind of two different phases.
She told me TB spreads when someone with active tuberculosis speaks or coughs and the germ is breathed in. The Center for Disease Control says people will likely test positive within 2 to 8 weeks if they do get infected. However, not all forms of TB are considered active.
Most people who are exposed to someone with infectious TB, if they do get infected with the germ, will develop what's called inactive or latent TB infection. And that just means that their body is able to contain those TB germs so they don't get sick from it, they don't have symptoms, they can't pass it on to others. And people can stay in that state for months to years to sometimes their entire life without progressing onto active TB disease.
In the case of Quirk's client, latent TB was confirmed, but active TB was ruled out by Tacoma General Hospital on July 9th after both X-rays and CT scans. Medical records show doctors discharged him, noting it was the medications making him sick. CDC guidelines say do not start latent TB infection treatment until TB disease is excluded.
Most people who are exposed to someone with active TB will never get infected. It really takes kind of ongoing, prolonged, close contact with that person.
While it's not confirmed when or where Quirk's client became exposed to TB, Dr. Rothoff says common tuberculosis screening tests have a known error rate.
The blood test and the skin test that we do for TB infection, that can be negative in about 20% of people with active TB.
And following our initial inquiry about Quirk's client, the Washington Health Department confirmed 7 suspected cases of tuberculosis at the Tacoma Detention Center and have started treatment. An ICE spokesperson says this is a false claim, but medical records prove at least one case was confirmed at the detention center that came through Anchorage.
Alaska has the highest rate of TB in the U.S., and it has had for years.
Alaska's Department of Health does not release data on infection rates for state-run facilities like the Anchorage jail.
Says his client continues to be treated for tuberculosis while remaining in ICE custody. And in a follow-up statement to Alaska news source, Quirk says he's doing okay and receiving care. We think it is outrageous. Transferred to a state prison in Alaska, only to return to Tacoma weeks later with this tuberculosis diagnosis. Our client wants the public to know that he and other detainees were exposed to tuberculosis while in ICE custody. At this point, only the authorities in Anchorage and Tacoma can answer where the TB originated. In email correspondence with me today, an ICE spokesperson offered to look further into Quirk's client's case. You as we learn more. 3 of this special series continues tomorrow at 6. John.
All right, look forward to that. Thank you, Augusta. Lawmakers say the governor is bringing the DOGE approach to Alaska after he issued 2 new orders this week. The governor says those orders aim to open transparency in government and make government operate more efficiently. The mechanism for those cuts, well, Governor Dunleavy says reduce regulations and eliminating waste. Now, what that waste definition is still largely unclear, but the goals under one of the orders, eradicating DEI spending, is listed.
It's obvious to me what the intent is, which is to find efficiencies because we don't have the luxury of spending on programs or projects that aren't absolutely efficient in getting outcomes for Alaskans, for hardworking Alaskans. And so this effort is very similar, I believe, to the effort at the national scale, which is, DOGE.
So it looks like a press release that he's putting out to get a little press. He's gotten some bad press recently over the education veto override and the oil tax audit override. And so now he's putting out a press release basically restating what his obligations have been for the last 7 years. And in some ways admitting that he hasn't accomplished those, saying that he hasn't made government as efficient.
Now, in a response, the governor's office did not answer whether or not layoffs would be used in carrying out the administrative orders.
And we have new details about the mysterious balloon that's been hovering over Anchorage this week. You've probably seen something on that on social media. The balloon is a high-altitude thunderhead balloon developed by Aerostar. It's meant to fly for extremely long durations. The company recently set the world record at 336 days of sustained flight. The balloon can be controlled remotely and by using gas canisters attached to it. And with the help of weather models, they can plan the direction the device will fly. Their customers, including the military organizations or private companies, can attach different payloads to the balloon. And this technology has a variety of purposes. It's evolved through the decades. Melissa Fry speaks with the company behind the research, and we've got that story for you coming up at 10.
Look forward to that. But before then, still ahead on Alaska's News Source, exploring the transitions for military families. We're going to go inside the gates for ways to make things a little easier.
You're watching Alaska's News Source.
So military families, they move every 2 to 3 years on average.
And many of those relocation orders being sent out over the summer months. Our Quinn White has more on how families can tackle these challenges together.
Military moves come with a lot of big changes. A new school, new friends, new everything. It's a lot to take in.
Transitions are hard. Those families are having to reestablish their residency. They're having to reestablish everything from a driver's license to where their favorite place to eat dinner is.
After families arrive at their new base, it might take a while to feel adjusted to their surroundings. Getting outside of the house to explore your new home can help ease some of those growing pains. But it's normal to grieve change.
Sometimes we just have to be okay with things being uncomfortable for a little bit.
But if that little bit is more than a few months, Dr. Goodman says it might be time to seek out a counselor or therapist.
I hear from families all the time, I don't want to take my kid to therapy. I don't want them in therapy for the rest of their life. I don't want them labeled. Well, what's interesting is what goes on behind the closed door is conversations, education, and listening. We're helping those clients, whether they be children or family systems, really understand and start a language that everyone in the family understands.
The Cohen Military Family Clinics in Anchorage and Fairbanks offer individual and group sessions for both children and adults, helping tackle challenges those in the service face.
So a counselor can take them through some skill building. There's wonderful groups here at the clinic that talk about communication skills, anger management skills, and some of these are just about you got to work through the bad situation, right? When you're trudging through the muck, sometimes you just need a little bit of a push or a rope to help you get through that area.
Persisting through change and finding the courage to ask for help when it's needed most. Quinn White, Alaska's news source.
Thanks for listening. Click subscribe so you can get the latest podcast from Alaska's news source automatically. And stay up to date with breaking news and in-depth reporting available for free 24/7 with the Alaska's news source app.